What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the BatFlip podcast. I'm Damien, and I'm back with my co-host Matt. How you doing, Matt?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Just trying to stay safe with all those fires going on in California. The air's been really bad right now. And how's your recovery from COVID going?
It's going very good. I'm feeling pretty close to back to normal now, and it took about. I had the first few days. I had that fever last weekend. Then this week took the first half of the week for me to really start feeling a lot better. But I feel pretty much back to normal now. So appreciate you asking.
Well, that's very, very good to hear.
Yeah.
We got about 4 or 5 topics we want to hit on today outside of our standings and our players of the week. Not too much of an eventful week in baseball, but we're starting to wind down in the season. I think I saw a thing today that we only have 16 actual days left of the regular season. These races, by the time we get our next episode and everything, the races are going to be so tight. We're going to be looking at pretty much our playoff breakdown. But let's just jump right into these standings right now. With the AL East, we got Tampa Bay. 3.5 games up. They've been 5-5 out of their last 10. Really starting to separate themselves as the AL East division champion. It's going to look like.
Yeah. The Rays are they look to be the definite front runner there. I also we're getting close. We're starting to look at some of the magic numbers and which basically the magic number for those of you that don't know is the amount of games that if you add up your wins and another team's losses, the amount of games that adds up there is your magic number to eliminate that team from having a better record than you. So right now the magic number for the Rays over the Blue Jays, who are actually in second place, is 11, and their magic number over the Yankees is 10. So the Rays, a combination of Rays wins and 11 Rays wins and Blue Jays losses, that combination would put the Rays in as the champion of the AL East, which is pretty surprising. I think most people had the Yankees winning that division, so good for the Rays. That lowest payroll in baseball, I believe. If not the lowest, it's one of the lowest. Good for them on being able to hang in there and take advantage of some of the Yankees injuries this year to lead that division with just a couple weeks left.
Yeah, in Toronto, Toronto's really holding their own right now, going 6-4. They've hopped the Yankees now in the standings, albeit only by a half game. But they've been playing some really good baseball while the Yankees have really started to struggle more and more. They've only played 500 this week. They should be getting Aaron Judge and Stanton back. I believe they said next weekend, maybe a little bit before then. But they're progressing. They really need them back. Paxton doesn't look like he's going to be back. I saw he had some stiffness after his latest throwing program routine, so they've shut him back down. Um, so the Yankees right now looking at, I think we were talking earlier, they're right around that number 8 seed in the playoffs right now.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, as if the season ended today, they would be the 8th seed. But they also do have a 2.5 game lead over the Mariners, who are surprisingly the first team out right now. So and none of the teams in the outside of that top 8 really strike fear into the Yankees at all. I mean, probably the closest thing to it would honestly be the Angels, who are 4 games back. But I mean, that's going to be a tough one to overcome there. So I think we're pretty much going to have the. I think the teams that are currently in the AL playoffs right now are going to be the teams that you see in the postseason. I don't think you're going to see too many changes there. Um, I think that you will see the. Um, I think you're going to see some of the seeding bounce around a little bit, but hey, you know, it's going to come down to the wire. So um, in the AL, when it comes to some of these divisions and everything, will be good.
Yeah, and I mean, jumping over to the AL Central, we sitting here today, it is by only half a game as well, but the Chicago White Sox, who we've had much conversation about on this podcast, they're the number one overall seed in the American League. They've been on a hot streak. They're 8-2 over their last 10. Minnesota's right there with them at 8-2 over their last 10 as well. But I would say at this point in the season, the way Chicago's been playing, that for them jumping up to that number one seed, I don't think any of us saw that coming.
Not at all. And the White Sox are. I don't know if they're gonna be. I don't know if they're gonna hold over the Twins. The Twins are only one game back. But they've also played two more games than the White Sox. Um, but with the Twins having recently got Josh Donaldson back, I think the Twins probably have a pretty good chance to overtake the White Sox. But either way, I mean, the way that the playoffs are set up for this season, um, it's going to be pretty difficult for either one of those teams to fall out of the playoffs or anything like that. So good for good for the Twins, or good for the White Sox to lead that division. And hey, they could very well win that division, which is surprising to me. I think this would be their first playoff appearance since 2008. So.
Yeah, and I know Minnesota also got Byron Buxton back this year, or not this year, this week. And they had a big series against Cleveland, and I want to say that Minnesota took 2 out of 3 from them or something. But Cleveland's fallen back to 4.5 out of that division now. Really rough week. They're down at 3-7. It just seems like ever since that trade deadline when they've got rid of Clevenger and made that stuff, it just seems like that team has kind of lost the confidence that they had and swagger that they had at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and Cleveland having not, you know, still this is like what 5 years in a row they still haven't gotten an outfielder. So I know technically Josh Naylor is an outfielder, but he's not really an outfielder. He's maybe one of the worst defensive outfielders in baseball right now. So
Well,
um,
same with Franmil as well.
yeah, Fran Mills the same way. I mean, you would think that they would acquire an outfielder who could somewhat play the outfield when they already have a DH, but instead they acquired a second DH to just throw out there. So that was it's some interesting decision making there for the Indians. But yeah, I mean, 4.5 games back in the division, they could. I mean, technically they could still sneak up there and get back in the division race, but they're also it's gonna take a lot to overcome 4.5 games, and it's gonna take a you know it's gonna take a very it's gonna take some kind of collapse by the White Sox or and the Twins for that to happen, because not only do they have to overtake one team that's more than 3.5 games ahead of them, they're gonna have to overtake two teams to get back on the top of that division. But they're also a pretty good team, and I think they'll be in the postseason. So
Yeah, they can get in the postseason, and with the way the postseason in this year, I mean, they could still make some noise. If it's going to be two, best 2 out of 3, pretty
yeah,
much 3 game series.
it's gonna be very tough to face the Indians rotation in 2 out of 3.
Yeah, give them. If you throw Bieber,
Bieber,
Carrasco,
Carrasco,
Plesac.
Plesac, Savali, like Tristan
Hmm.
McKenzie's been really good. I mean, there's multiple guys in that rotation, and that I just would not want to face. So whoever gets the Indians, it'll probably be White Sox or Rays. Whoever gets the Indians is in for a tough game, or tough three-game series for sure.
I would love, just personally, to see a Tampa Bay, uh, Cleveland series. You give me a Bieber versus Snell, and then
Oh yeah,
a Carrasco versus Glass now, and then
Charlie
a
Morton versus
Plesac or McKenzie or whoever they decide to
yeah.
throw.
I don't know who it would be. I mean, all three of those other options are really good, and I think it would probably be Plesac, but all three of those options are good. They have five real good rotation options in Cleveland, and that's after trading away a lot of guys. That's very that's very good.
Right. Jumping over to the AL West, we got Oakland, who's 6 games up on Houston in this division. Been 6-4 over their last 10. Houston's really struggled, 2-8. They had a big, huge comeback win last night, which is Saturday, against Kenley Jansen and the Dodgers. They scored, I think it was 4 or 5 runs in the bottom of the ninth, without
Wow.
even getting an out. Yeah, Kenley gave up like 4 runs without even getting an out. And a lot of the pitches, honestly, were good pitches. He just wasn't finishing the plate appearances and putting them away. And
Yeah.
they were getting some soft contact, and then led to another soft contact, which led then to a gap shot. And it was just credit to Houston, though. They really stayed in it, and that was a big game with everything. It's their first trip back to Los Angeles since everything happened.
Yeah.
Um, but and with the news of Oakland losing a big star, Matt Chapman, this week, who we'll hit on a little bit later, Houston, if they could start hit their stride, this turnaround series against the Dodgers, it is only 2 games, but if they could do something like that, this could be a big thing for them to kind of get a monkey off their back, knowing that they had to face the Dodgers, especially in Los Angeles, even with no fans. This is still a big series that it can turn around a lot of momentum for them. And like we said, it'll be hard for them to make up 6 games. But if there's a team that could do it, I wouldn't put it past the Houston Astros to be one of those guys.
Yeah, and Houston's pretty safe because while they are only 2 games ahead of the Mariners, in the division for second place in the division, they currently have out of the 8 playoff teams in the AL, they have the worst record out of the 8. But they're also their competition right now is the Mariners, so and the Angels. So I mean they got 4 games up on the Angels and they got 2 games on the Mariners. I don't really see. Definitely don't see the Mariners having any shot at overtaking the Astros. The Angels, if they got hot, they've got a little bit more talent than the Mariners, so I guess they could theoretically do it, but it's gonna be really hard. Um, the Astros are gonna be, I think they're gonna go as far as their pitching staff's gonna take them, and through injuries and losing Garrett Cole in free agency, that pitching staff just doesn't quite scare you as much as they have in the past few years when they had Verlander and Garrett Cole. I mean, you've got a Lance McCullers who's not quite as who's come back from injury pretty well, but he's not a shutdown starting pitcher. He's good, but I mean really their only top starter right now is Zach Greinke. So but outside of Greinke, I mean you got Valdez and you've got a couple of these other guys that I don't really think are too scary. Urquidy or whatever his name is, and um,
Jose Urquidy.
yeah, I mean, you got some of these guys that aren't quite as scary. So I definitely am thinking that the Astros make it. I think the A's are probably going to, even without Matt Chapman, are probably going to, continue to run away with the division just because, I mean, we're sitting here with 2 weeks left and it's a 6 game lead. I mean, it's their magic number against the Astros is currently 9 games. So, um, it doesn't take too many. I mean, you start having one day the Angels win, the A's win, and the Astros lose, and you knock 2 games off that number. So,
Right.
it's going to be very very difficult for the. It would take a collapse by the A's for the Astros to come back and win that division. But
Yeah.
the interestingly enough, for the Astros as well, their home and away splits are very prevalent. 16-6 at home, 7-17 on the road, which is very interesting. In fact, that whole division, the Angels 12 and 12 at home, 8-16 on the road. The Rangers 13-13 at home. The 17-30 Rangers actually are 500 at home. They're 4-17 on the road. Um, it's a very you know it's very interesting. It's a lot like in a lot of places. There's a few teams like the Twins that also have pretty dramatic splits there, but most places it's been fairly even.
It almost
For
makes
home
you
and away
think of,
splits.
with everything going on in Houston, that they're still that good at home. It kind of makes you think of something. Bang, bang.
Yeah,
I'm just
I don't
kidding.
know about
I'm just messing around.
that.
It's just funny
Yeah,
to
but
say.
oh
But it's
yeah, but
it's it's really interesting. If you look at their, above 500, even they're 6-13 against teams with
yeah,
a over 500 record.
yeah.
And
It's
that,
of course when you're playing the AL West that you don't get that many opportunities to play good teams. So
yeah,
you're playing mostly the Mariners, the Angels, and the Rangers. Who the Rangers are horrible, and then the Mariners are pretty bad, and the Angels are the Angels. So, they have some talented guys, but they also have Albert Pujols getting cleanup every day, who did hit a home run tonight. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but
yeah, it was a very historic home run.
yes, very much so.
But like we said, we'll hit on that a little bit later. We'll keep on moving. Jump over to the NL East now. With your Atlanta Braves kind of starting to separate a little bit more in this division. I know they've had a couple big players this week with some big games. Um,
Yeah, yeah. The Braves have 3 guys at the top of their order with an OPS over 1,000. Um, and the offense has just been absolutely going crazy in the last couple weeks. They had a 29 run game the other day against the the second place Marlins, where they actually scored 29 runs, which is the National League record, or at least the National League modern era record. Um, the offense is just clicking. I mean, you got guys like Adam Duvall hit a second 3 home run game in a week. Um, it, just absolutely insanely good in that. And the starting pitching's actually starting to turn a corner a little bit. The Braves are getting back Cole Hamels this week and make his debut, I believe, on Wednesday, which is very interesting. Cole Hamels, the guy that they signed in free agency on a big 1 year deal. And hey, he was going to be hurt at the start of the season, and he never recovered until the restart with the COVID restart, and then after it's almost midway through September. Finally, Cole Hamels is going to pitch in a Braves uniform for the first time on Wednesday. So um, that'll be a big boost to get a veteran guy back, even if he's not quite to 100% pitch count yet, where they might limit him to 3 or 4 innings for a couple starts. But just getting him back for a postseason series would be great. And then Ian Anderson pitched a fantastic game against the Nationals the other day. Kyle Wright actually pitched a half decent game today. Had some. He did give up 3 earned runs. He had some really bad luck giving up the 3 earned runs on some defensive. We'll just call them misplays. Um, they weren't technically error, if it's an earned run, of course, but some misplays that the bullpen for the Braves has been good. It's it looks to me like they've started to kind of play. It's starting to come together a little bit. They get Max Fried back on Thursday. So this is a team that is starting to put it together a little bit when it comes to the starting pitching to go along with their already fantastic lineup and bullpen. So that
Yeah,
it's been an encouraging week.
I found it pretty fascinating that the time that this offense kind of made their turnaround in this big run is right around the time that Ozzy Albies really came back. Um, it could just be something that is a coincidence that happened, or it could be something that not only is he another guy who gives you really professional at bats at the plate, but another just morale boost to have him back out there and he's one of the most I don't know. He's one of the favorite players on that team. I just see by his personality that everybody loves him. So maybe that's just a big jolt for that
Yeah,
team to get him back.
yeah. Well, not only is it a jolt for the team chemistry wise and everything, it's also a jolt in the lineup because you already had a great lineup, and of course there were a couple other lineup changes the Braves made that putting their best hitters 1, 2, 3, which is something that you see a lot more around the game recently, which is a good thing, I think. You know, because as good as Dansby Swanson's been this year, there were a lot of times you were having him up instead of Freddie Freeman in a big situation, which. No offense to Dansby because he's had a really good year, but you want Freddie Freeman up, so who's honestly rate wise is having one of the best seasons of his career, which is crazy. But you've got but Ozzy Albies, I mean, you're looking at a guy he's replacing, a platoon of Adani Hechavarria and Johan Camargo, who, you know, regardless of what Ozzy brings to the table in confidence for the players, for the team, getting a jolt, getting some energy with him back in there. I mean, he's just a better player. I mean, you're talking about a journeyman bench guy and Hechavarria and a guy who's really not been very good the last couple of years in Camargo. So um, the only hole in the Braves lineup is filled by a guy who's an all-star caliber second baseman. So um, you know eh, that's a big that was a big game for the Braves getting Ozzy Albies back, and he's playing pretty well too. He's hit a couple home runs this week. He's looking, he looks a lot better than he did at the beginning of the season when he was trying to play through injury. So
Yeah. And Miami this week, I think they took it was 3 out of 5 from Philly.
yeah, I think they
They've
played
now
two more. They actually play 2 more games against Philly tomorrow, a doubleheader again. So
wow. I didn't know that.
yeah,
But
a lot of their COVID postpones were against the Phillies. So
what I did see though is that Sixto had an amazing game once again. Um, he could be making a run for the rookie of the year the way he's pitched this year. I think what he have? He had another 7 innings of one-run ball today against the Phillies, and I think every start so far of his career he's went at least 5, and 4 or 3 of his 5 starts he's went 7.
Yeah,
Um,
Sixto Sanchez, I think, out of all the prospects and guys that have just recently come up and everything, I think Sixto Sanchez has the best chance to be a legit ace out of everybody. And I mean, you look at him today, you face the Phillies in a really a must-win game for the Marlins. It must-win two games for the Marlins to try to make the playoffs. And Sixto Sanchez, 7 innings, 1 run. His rate, his he did. He wasn't perfect. He hit 3 walks and just 4 strikeouts. But this is a guy that you know between throwing 99, 100, and also having a really good changeup, a good slider. This is a guy that's got everything. He's got a pretty good command of his pitches. He can lose it a little bit at times, but he's got at least he can at least throw strikes. I mean, and when you throw 99, 100, and you've got good off speed and you throw strikes, I mean, you're looking at a legit potential ace. And I don't know, I really don't understand why he wasn't quite as why wasn't much higher on a lot of people's prospect boards because he looks really good. And I don't know if you've seen he has a 45 tattoo on his neck from for Pedro Martinez. And
I
he
did see that.
yeah, and he's a guy that he reminds you a little bit of a young Pedro Martinez. He's that kind of
Well,
special.
he's been mentored by Pedro a lot as well. I remember when he got traded in the JT Realmuto trade from the Phillies, actually. So this is kind of a full
Yep.
circle deal for him. His first start against the Phillies. Pedro was on MLB Tonight when they were talking about that, and he said just how he mentors this guy and how he's going
Yeah.
to be, one of the studs in the league and that. And so the connection, really watching him actually
Yeah.
pitch, it really does remind you of Pedro. If you just go back and watch highlights of Pedro, it's very, very similar to what you're seeing from Sixto, and it's pretty
Yeah.
fascinating.
Oh yeah, and you talk about that trade, and that could end up looking really really bad because the Phillies are, unless they make a pretty nice turnaround here, uh, you're looking at them having 2 seasons of JT Realmuto and JT Realmuto going into free agency where he would likely. I don't think the Phillies are going to have the money to bring him back. And you're looking at 2 years of JT Realmuto, in which the first year was a disastrous year where they didn't even make it 500, and then this year is a year that the Phillies are actually. I think they'll probably make the postseason, but they also aren't very good. So I don't
They're a
think they make
team
it out of the
in a
first round.
Hey, I don't know. In a 3-game series, though, if you could throw Nola and Zach Wheeler, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's. I understand that after that, but you only got to win 2 of those games.
yeah.
So if you go
So
in there and you have Nola and Wheeler
yeah.
at the
Well,
top
I'll
of their game,
rephrase. I'll rephrase. The Phillies aren't a legit World Series contender, and the fact that if they finish third behind the Marlins in the division in a season with that, the Phillies also once you get Wheeler or and you've seen that so many times this year. Once you get Wheeler or Nola out of the game, their bullpen is just horrible. They have a horrible bullpen. I mean, Brandon Workman's their best reliever. I mean,
and he's really struggled since coming over.
yeah, and he struggled too. So I mean, and he's still their best reliever. I mean, and their bullpen is terrible. So you look at the Phillies, and there's no David Robertson in their bullpen. There's no Sir Anthony Dominguez. There's no a few of these guys that there's no. Well, I think that Hector Neris is still there, but he's been really bad this year. I mean, there's just nothing there. I mean, it's like you can get Zach Wheeler can pitch 7 shutout innings, and then they'll give up 5 runs in their last two. So the Phillies, if they make the postseason, I mean, I really struggle seeing them win, and especially against if you look at who they would be playing. I mean, you're looking at either the Dodgers, who obviously are gonna take out the Phillies in a 3-game series. I mean, you're gonna have to if you're the Phillies, you're gonna have to face Kershaw and Walker Bueller, possibly if he's back, which I would assume he would be since it's just blister issues.
Yeah,
Um,
even though he got put back on the IL, he said that the,
yeah, it's
he
probably just
doesn't want to do. He doesn't want to do it. It was only the team doing it, kind of saving him from himself. And if
yeah,
it was the playoffs, he'd be pitching.
it just missed one start. I mean, it's just the way to. if he's got some kind of blister issue, there's no reason to push it when you've got such a big lead. But I mean, you're also looking at potentially facing the either they would probably face either the Dodgers where they'd match up with Kershaw and Bueller, or and or the Braves where the top of that rotation you'd be matching up with Freed, Cole Hamels, Ian Anderson. Or the Cubs, which you'll match up with Yu Darvish or Kyle Hendricks. So it's one of
or
those things where and
Ace Alec Mills.
yeah, Alec Mills. I don't think Alec. I know Alec Mills. Good for him on what he did today, but I don't know about Alec Mills being being able to being in that postseason rotation. Or if the Phillies were to overtake the Marlins, then you have to face the Padres. So and you'll have to face Clevenger, Lamette in that lineup. So I mean, I don't. The Phillies do have a couple of really good starting pitchers, but they're going to have to pitch 9 innings. I mean, for them to win these games, because they're also not. They're also facing teams that can limit runs, especially at the top of the rotation. And and the Phillies after those first two, Zach Eflin's all right, but they're not really great. So, and this is a team that if their lineup really, their lineup's all right, but you know, they're not a great offensive team either. So they're a good offensive team, but not great. They don't have an elite in their bullpen as bad as it is. I don't see the Phillies advancing very far. But you talk about that trade. I mean, talk about Sixto, and you talk about what they gave up for Real Muto, and that trade could end up looking really really bad really really quickly if they don't make the postseason or advance out of the first round in a weird year where they have to have an expanded postseason to make it. Um, you know that trade starts to look really bad because the real deal Sixto's the real deal, and he's going to haunt the Phillies for a long time. And if Real Muto leaves, that's going to be tough for the Phillies to swallow that trade.
Well, I mean, it all depends if they re-sign JT Realmuto. Um, I believe it's this offseason, is it
Yeah,
not?
he's a free agent at the
Um,
end of this year.
so best catcher in baseball, though, when when we looked at the trade, you kind of looked and was like, well, I mean, Sixto's legit. Like you said, a lot of people were actually down on Sixto. I don't know why. We were both pretty high on him, um, and he's proven us right. But I think it really just depends if they're able to sign him. You take the shot, especially after signing or trading or signing for Harper, and having Hoskins. You take the shot and you trade for the best catcher in baseball, but you have to re-sign him. You
Yeah,
have to be able to re-sign him.
yeah.
If you don't, then that's when this deal looks a lot worse. If you're able to re-sign him, you're still going to look back and be like, "Dang, we gave up this guy,"
Could have just
but at
got him
least
free agency this year too, if that happens. So,
maybe.
yeah,
Um,
I mean,
but anyways, let's go ahead and jump over to the NL Central now, where the Chicago Cubs had a really big deal happen today. We joked
yeah,
around with Alec Mills, but he threw, was it the 16th no
believe it was
hitter?
the 16th no hitter in Cubs history.
Yeah, it was the 16th no hitter in
Obviously
Cubs
the
history today.
obviously the second no hitter in all of baseball for this year. So good for him. 4 strikeouts, 3 walks. It's one of those no hitters where he wasn't. He was good. He was obviously good to get a no hitter, but maybe not the most dominant no hitter you've seen. But hey, it's a no hitter, and Alec Mills, who doesn't really appear to be the future of the Cubs pitching rotation or anything, even though he is still fairly young and hadn't been around a super long time. He'll have his name in the record books forever. So good for him. That's very that's a cool moment for him. Um, and
Yeah, he off just looking at the baseball savant page, he gave up 15 hard hit balls
yeah,
in this outing today. With a couple of them, one of them had an expected batting average of 810, and another one with 690, and another one of 740. So
yeah.
the
Well,
Cubs
not
did a
not just
really
that.
good,
I
good
saw.
job of doing positioning.
Oh yeah, and I saw he only had 5 swinging strikes the entire game. So it's one of those that you know, it's like it's more in the Philip Humber Dallas Braden cut than
Right.
the Giolito from a few weeks ago cut. So, um, where it's really not the most. dominant outing, but it works out for him. Of course, those were that I mentioned were perfect games, so that's a little different. Um, but yeah, I mean, good for him. Good for the Cubs. They've taken that 4 game lead now. I still don't really believe in the Cubs in the postseason. Darvish is going to be really tough for a team to hit, but um, I think that with their bullpen, I think you just have to wait out a guy like Darvish. It's kind of the similar situation to the Phillies, and I think the Phillies offense might actually be a little bit better than the Cubs offense. So
Well, they need Chris Bryant back, like the real Chris Bryant. He's
yeah,
playing, but they're still he's still battling that wrist injury. They're giving him multiple days off in a row and still trying to give him some
Chris
cortisone
Bryant
shots
Chris
and
Bryant's
stuff.
hurting the Cubs more than he's helping them right now. It's really similar to last year's offseason where the Braves had Freddie Freeman in the lineup with that elbow injury, and it was really hurting the Braves more to have him in the lineup than it would have been for him to sit. It's the same thing with Chris Bryant right now for the Cubs. You admire the fact that he's trying to play through it, playing through injury and everything, but honestly, he's really hurting the team with the quality of he's been able to put out on the field. So he really needs to either this if this wrist injury is not the problem, then he needs to play better. If it is the problem, then it might be time for him to sit again because it's very it's a very very good thing for him to try to play through it. I think that's really cool, but at a certain point, if it's causing you to struggle as badly as he's struggling, then you're really just hurting the team right now. So, um, hopefully hopefully his wrist isn't the problem and he starts to turn it around, or hopefully if it is the problem, it gets better quickly. But they really need they need an MVP caliber player and not a 570 OPS caliber player that like Chris Bryant's playing right now. So the Cubs need more though. They need Javi Baez to play well. That's kind of the key to that franchise. When Javi Baez plays well, they're a World Series contender. When he plays like he is this year, they're not. I mean, and that's just kind of the way that Javi Baez is. He swings at everything, and if he when he's not hot, and when teams are throwing in pretty decent pitches and aren't giving in to him, he swings at everything. He doesn't ever work into good counts. So, um, you know, he's gonna have to adjust. And you would have thought he would have adjusted to the swinging at everything a while back, but he was able to have some success, and he never adjusted that well to it. So that's another thing that they'll need if they need if for the Cubs to do anything in the postseason. They need Chris Bryant and Javier Baez to play better, and then whatever some of these other guys could give them, that have struggled a little bit, like Wilson Contreras or somebody like that. Then that would be good for them but with there's really no excuse for them not to be a contender right now with Jason Hayward playing like he is and Ian Happ playing like he has. Although Ian Happ's struggled a little bit as of late.
It seems like Ian Happ and Jason Hayward have just taken the spots of Javi Baez and Chris Bryant, and then Chris Bryant and Javi Baez just decided to play like Ian Happ and Jason Hayward from the last couple seasons.
Yeah, I mean, and
I know they're not quite that bad, but still, it's
yeah,
the Cubs, like you said, Javi Baez and Chris Bryant. They're 2/3 of what that team needs to get that train rolling.
yeah,
With them and Anthony Rizzo, when they're all hitting, the Cubs are hard to beat, even with their lack of bullpen
yeah,
that they have. But with Darvish and Hendricks, and if you can, depends on which John Lester shows up. If you get the John Lester that just showed up the past game, then you're looking really good. But
yeah,
St. Louis, they're still trying to make up some of those games. I think they still got 8 games or so that they have to make up from their COVID postponements and stuff.
yeah. They got to
Um,
play 20 games in the last 2 weeks to make it all the way up, and I would assume that they're going to do that because they really need to with where they are in the standings. I mean, they're they've got 20 games. They're so close to first place, and they're currently a playoff team, so they'll have to play all 60 games.
yeah, and if Dakota Hudson's looked really good.
Yeah,
Jack Flaherty, I think, is starting to round back into Jack Flaherty form.
he's
Um,
he's a little inconsistent, but he's
he's
been decent.
Yeah, which they really need him to be the Jack Flaherty we saw last year in the second half, to be really good. Goldschmidt's playing like an MVP talent that he's shown before, which is really good because last year he really just started with six bad weeks to really start, and then he put up insane numbers, but the numbers at the end of the season
It,
like
yeah,
didn't look like Paul Goldschmidt really type numbers.
he was still striking out a lot more than he did with the Diamondbacks last year. His strikeout rate had spiked from when he was had his best with the Diamondbacks, and I haven't really looked too much into it, but I would assume that number's probably come back down some this year. But
Yeah, yeah, he's taking more pitches. Um, but it's weird. He's taking more pitches, but at the same time, he's swinging at a lot more first pitches.
yeah, he's being
And
more he's seeing the ball a little bit better. He's not being quite as impatient out of the zone.
right, so Paul Goldschmidt is the type of guy who he can be the leading hitter on a World Series contending team, and the Cardinals really need him to be that way. With you know, they don't really have much great hitters around him. Yachty's been Yachty. He's an average MLB hitter. Colton Wong, same thing.
Yeah,
DeYoung
platoon.
Paul DeYoung is solid, but he's not great.
Yeah,
Um, Carpenter, which Mark Carpenter are you getting? Are you getting the guy who can hit 350 or the guy who is going to have 35 strikeouts and 35 at bats?
yeah.
You just really don't know with him. So they really need Goldschmidt to be firing on all cylinders to make that thing work. Um, Milwaukee, they just got no hit today. They're 20-24. Lost two. Is it 2 out of 3 to the Cubs this weekend,
I
or did
believe
they get
so.
swept?
They might have gotten swept, but I'm not 100% sure. Milwaukee's problem is that they are not swinging the bats like they have in the past couple years, and it starts with obviously Christian Yelich hasn't been as good. He's been fine this year, but he hadn't been as good as he has been in the past. Um, but I mean, if you look at their lineup, I mean, you're looking at like seven. They don't have a single player in their lineup today, other than Jed Jerko, who I don't think has really played that much, that has an OPS over 800. Everyone else is below 800, and um, it's Castanera and they shouldn't have traded Trent Grisham. I mean, they lost Grandal. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's going on with the Brewers. It's just not great. So,
Yeah, they
uh,
really thought Omar Narvaez would be something, and
yeah,
he has not hit the way he hit last year.
yeah,
And their pitching just really disappointing.
yeah,
It's even more disappointing to see Cincinnati still down here, 6.5 games back.
yeah.
Um,
If
Cincinnati just lost Sonny Gray today. They put him on the IL with a back strain.
if
They
we
don't
had
know
a if we had a 162 game season, I'd still be picking the Reds to make the playoffs in that division, but we don't. So
definitely. Um, and Pittsburgh just down there at the bottom, like
yeah,
they've been
Pittsburgh's
the entire
really
season.
bad. They're looking like the number one pick. So
Jumping over to the finishing up with the NL West, the Dodgers have been 6-4 this week. We talked about their collapse last night to the Astros. Um, they lost Dustin May this week. He got hit with a line drive and on the foot. Walker Buehler, like we said, went back on the IL with a blister issue. Sounds like May should be back probably Wednesday or Thursday. Bueller should be back when he's ready to come off the IL, as soon as his date allows him to come off.
yeah,
They're just being super protective with him, But they got to step it up a little bit more. We've had a running joke with all of our group chats that I've been messing around saying the Dodgers have been trash and stuff, and every time I say that they win. It's been pretty funny, but you know we've been talking about how the Dodgers have this lead. The Dodgers have this lead. Well, if you look at it now, they only have a 2.5 game lead over San Diego. That's only the second. That's the second smallest lead in the majors right now. San Diego's been 8-2 over their last 10, and they got a big series coming up with the Dodgers this week. I want to say it's a 3-game series, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
yeah,
But it's going to be a big series where either way, That's going to really separate who's going to win this division and
Yeah.
who's not. But it's time for the Dodgers to really step it up. They've fallen off a little bit recently, and the Padres have gone on a hot streak, and ever since they made those trades at the deadline, and they're looking like a real scary contender.
Yeah, the Padres have some good pieces, and Clevenger's pitched well since he got there. Austin Nola's played pretty well. But hey, the surprise team for me in that division is, I mean, I'm not surprised at all the Dodgers in first place. The Padres, their record may be a little bit surprising, but I mean, I think a lot of people expected them to have that potential to take a step forward this year. Hey, the Giants at 23-23 are currently the 8th seed in the playoffs, so and have a 2-game lead for that spot over the Colorado Rockies. So good for the Giants. I mean, you could very well be talking about a 3-game series between the Giants and the Dodgers in the first round.
And
So
if there's one team I do not want the Dodgers to face in the first round, it's the Giants.
yeah,
Because no matter how bad the San Francisco Giants are,
they'll
they
play
play
tough.
they play the Los Angeles Dodgers like it is Game 7 of the World Series
Yeah.
every single time. Um,
So, but
Bitter
hey,
rivals can't stand them.
you never know. It's an even year. So
Don't even get me started on that. They've lost Bumgarner.
I know.
Uh,
So
well, that pretty much wraps up our standings recap. Let's go ahead and hit on this Matt Chapman
yeah,
out for the season. Um, Torn right hip labrum. I want to say it happened this what was it, Monday? I think it
it
was.
was maybe it might have been after that. I'm not really sure.
It was a day game. I remember watching. There was a live look in. It was ground ball. Kind of towards the shortstop area, but they were shifted a little bit, and Chapman makes the run over there and gets it like Matt Chapman should. Best fielder in baseball, I will say that, yes, over Nolan Arenado, I believe so. And he just comes up limp and starts, grabbing his hip. It looked like a routine ball, still got the out and everything, and he just was grimacing a little bit, grabbed his hip, immediately came out of the game, and then it came out today that he's out of nowhere, really. They just said like nobody really knew what it was, just something with the hip, something with the hip. It was still bothering him. And I guess they got the MRIs back today. And it just came out of the blue that he was out for the season and having season ending surgery tomorrow.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate. You're talking about a guy who's a very well-rounded player. I mean, especially defensively, like you were saying. I mean, just his last 2 seasons, really his last three seasons, 2017 and only 84 games, put up 3 wins above replacement. But his last 2 seasons, I mean, you're talking about 2018, a 138 WRC plus and 6.6 wins above replacement. That's a borderline MVP level uh, of uh, of productivity there. And then last year, he had a much lower batting average on balls in play and still put up a really nice season. It's a guy who hits the ball hard. This year, his strikeout rate spiked a lot. Of course, it's only 37 games this year, so I wouldn't look too much into that. Some of these strikeout rates spiking, sometimes it's just a cold streak early in the season. Sometimes it's a little bit of luck. It's just a few bad strike three calls will change that a lot. But I mean, this guy still even this has probably been the worst year of his career and has put up 1.3 wins above replacement. Just a great defensive player, and you hate to see him get hurt, especially a guy who is a great defensive player. Having a leg injury or something that you hope he fully recovers from that next year, which I would assume he would. But sometimes when you get those defensive first players like that, sometimes they start to have some injuries and their body just doesn't quite do as well in the field as it had at one point. So hopefully we see him back to being Matt Chapman next year. It's a big blow for the A's.
Yeah, I was going to say, as big of a blow as it might be to Matt Chapman, this is a massive blow to the Oakland A's
Mhm.
chances this year. Like we said, it was his worst offensive season or worst year altogether in the majors, and yet I would still say he's probably the best player on the A's. And he was leading them to, a top of the division,
Yeah.
a division winning team most likely.
Yep.
And for them to lose him
Yeah.
this close to the playoffs after the trade deadline where they can't really do anything, just going to have to fill in. Good thing they did trade for Tommy La Stella now, who
Oh yeah. I mean, that's
that
looking
that's a
huge now.
that's looking pretty big. You can put him over there, and you can still get Tony Kemp in the lineup. But that's a big deal. Where it's going to be fascinating to see how the Oakland A's really recover around this and see what they can do lineup wise and how the production will handle with Matt Chapman being out of that lineup.
Yeah. So that sucks. I hated to see that today. So
Yeah. Well, staying in that division, we talked about Albert Pujols hitting a milestone home run today. He hit his 660th home run,
it's
which
crazy.
now ties him with Willie Mays for fifth place on the all-time uh, home run record list.
Hey, that's incredible and good for Albert Pujols. I'm interested to and maybe this is something we could talk about in a future episode. Maybe over the off season, and I'm interested to see how far he can get on that list because this is a guy that he's so old, but he's still got just a little bit of he's still got some power left. I mean, he can still hit the ball pretty hard. I mean, it's just interesting. It'd be interesting to see how far, and obviously, I think he goes as far as the teams are willing to sign him because, I think after next year he's not going to be on the Angels anymore. Um, so maybe he can hit 15 to 20 next year and get him up to 375, 380, and then you see if a team takes a chance on maybe a rebuilding team brings him in as a veteran player, see if he can maybe get to 700. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with him.
And I think he's a guy who could hit 15 and 20 just falling out of bed. He's not going to be like Nelson Cruz still being able to hit 40.
No.
But it's a good story, and it really is. This is one thing that I've been really trying to be on the lookout for this year. Is this season hurts a lot of these guys.
Oh yeah, for sure.
This shortened 60 game season
Yep.
because where Pujols might be able to hit 20, maybe even
Yeah.
25 in a really good season, he's going to be lucky to scratch 10 this year.
Yeah. He's only
I'm
hit
not
four,
sure.
I think.
Yeah, that's what I say. So he's not even going to hit. He might not even hit five or six. Uh,
Yeah.
it's this season is really going to go
Yeah.
down. We have
Or
to this
or
is
a
a
guy
season
like
that's going to impact all records list
yeah,
for many years down the road.
yeah.
If we're looking at a list later down the road and saying, did Mike Trout get 3,000 hits, or did Mike Trout hit so many home runs, or you're Clayton Kershaw, did he get how many strikeouts, or whatever? You're going to look back at this season and be
Yeah.
like, man, they lost 100 games right there that could really.
Well, that is true, but in the same thing, sometimes it helps a guy like we were talking about Kershaw. He looks healthier at this point in the season than he has in a long time. Kershaw could be poised for a bigger year next year than he would have had if he had pitched all year this year. Some of these veteran players, especially guys who have had some nagging injuries, this could really have helped them in some ways. Where maybe Kershaw, the way that he's pitched the past couple of years, his velocity's dropped the past few years and stuff. Maybe his velocity seems to have come back some this year. Maybe with all that extra rest this year, next year he can have 250 strikeouts instead of 200, where it really doesn't affect it too awfully much. Maybe Pujols, maybe having this extra rest will help him have a couple more years in the tank where he can hit 15 home runs or something. It's one of those things where, yeah, it definitely hurts. It hurts a guy like Pujols for sure, who doesn't have very long left. Pujols' whole thing is probably running out his contract. Whenever his contract runs out, it's going to be really tough for him to find a place to play. Miguel Cabrera is another guy. He's close to 500 home runs, and he will probably get there. But Miguel Cabrera's, this hurts him a lot. His ability to chase down 500 home runs or and move up on the list. There's a lot of guys that are right around 500 too. So, if he could get to 520 home runs, he passes four or five more. Mel Ott, and, Mickey Mantle, and you look at a few of the more recent guys on the home runs list. So, um, that really is Eddie Matthews. That's really a bummer for Pujols and for Miguel Cabrera. So um, hopefully some of these guys that are still fairly young, like Kershaw is what, 33. I mean, he's not
Yeah,
that
when it's
old. Like he's
third.
not young anymore, but he's you see pitchers that are his caliber pitch pretty well till they're 37, 38. I mean, um, Kershaw still probably got 4 or 5 years left of at least being a good major league pitcher. I don't know about being an ace. I don't know about being, the 300 strikeout Kershaw. But he's still got 3 or 4 pretty good years left, I'm sure. So, but you look at a guy like Pujols, what 43, 42 years old. He's just doesn't. I just don't know if he has much left in the tank as it is.
Yeah, it's going
Um,
to be something fascinating to really see how it over these develops out of these next couple years.
for sure, for sure.
Uh, well, let's go ahead and jump to our players of the week and wrap this episode up. Um, for my hitter of the week, I'm going with Detroit Tigers third baseman Heimer Candelario. 8 games this week, 31 plate appearances. He's hit 3 home runs, drove in 10, scored 8, hitting 444 um, with a .7 WAR this week. Getting on base almost 52% of the time.
Yep,
His walk rate's about 13%, struck out about 16% this week, which is about major league average. It's just a really good week for a guy he's a very streaky hitter. He gets on these where he hits really, really good, and then he looks like he's a double A player playing in the majors. But it's a really good week for Heimer Candelario, and
yep.
just an under the radar name that I wanted to throw out
And
there.
talking about Heimer Candelario too, um, that could go down as a really, really, really poor trade. The Cubs traded Heimer Candelario and Isaac Paredes. Is that how you say it?
Paredes.
They traded, yeah, Paredes. They traded them for Justin Wilson and Alex Avila. So back in 2016, I believe, or 2017, I think. That is a not good trade at all. And because Justin Wilson wasn't very good, he didn't play there anymore, and Alex Avila I don't think was very good, and he doesn't play there anymore. So it was definitely 2017 because they still had Miguel Montero as their second catcher in 2016. So um, come to think of it, but that could and Heimer Candelario has shown potential in the big leagues. He hasn't been great. He's been a little inconsistent, but I mean he has weeks like this where he looks really good. So
Yeah, and
good on him.
he's still 26. He's going to
Yeah.
turn 27 pretty soon, but still a young piece that, like we said, he's shown promise. He just needs to get consistent with it.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
so, who do you got for your hitter of the week?
My hitter is going to be Freddie Freeman. You look for sometimes a guy that's as consistent as Freddie Freeman is, it takes some time to, you have to find a time to highlight him as being what he is. This week, he has hit 414 with 514 on base percentage and a 931 slugging percentage to go along with a 260 WRC plus. Um, he's only struck out 8% of the time this week and has walked 14%. And you look at it, this is being a guy he's hitting the ball really hard this year. 94.5 exit velocity this week. And when it comes to Freddie Freeman, I want to talk about what he's done over the season too. Today he went 1 for 3 with 2 walks and a double. He actually stole his first base of the season today. But Freddie Freeman has cut his strikeout rate down 5% this year. And he's hitting 339 with a 459 on base and a 625 slugging percentage this season. More walks than strikeouts. He's only struck out 28 times and 205 plate appearances. Uh, this is a guy that he's Mr. Consistency, and he has been for a long time. But sometimes you just have to highlight somebody like that. And he's put up also this week has put up this year has put up the highest exit velocity of his career while cutting his strikeout rate by 5%. All of this after having a really, really bad case of COVID right before the season started and struggling for the first week or two. This guy has been i- impossibly good this year for what he's had to deal with. So good for him.
Yeah, it's a like you said, Freddie Freeman is so consistent that he's a guy who usually probably wouldn't make a players of the week list, just because he's just so under the radar and consistent. But he's a very very good player in baseball. I would say he's probably a top 20 player in baseball, and most people wouldn't put him
He
up just quite that high.
I think he's every bit of top 20, and I think he's top 15. I mean, he's a guy that, I mean, you look at his hitting stats, and I mean, he's put up a 176 WRC plus this year, and this is a guy that over the past, you look at it, just his consistency. I mean, over the past several years, he's not quite Mike Trout because of position, but he's not quite like that, but I mean, he's put up last year 4 wins, the year before last five wins, year before that 4 wins, year before that 6 wins. I mean, this is a guy that has put up very, very good numbers. Uh, it's been one of the best, one of the definitely the best first baseman in baseball over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I mean, even 2013 he put up a 5-win season. So this is a very good player, and I don't think he gets enough credit for how good he is. So
Well, like we say, he's very consistent, so he doesn't get the flashy, the flashy numbers, but he's always a guy who will give you a consistent stat line every single year, and most people don't value that the same. They like the
yeah,
guys who go out and hit a 50 home runs one
yeah,
season, and Freddie Freeman's just he's
yeah,
not that, but he's somebody who you can pencil in his stats every single year.
yeah, for sure.
Uh,
Well, who's your pitcher this week?
I want to give an honorable mention before I do my real
Yeah,
pitcher.
go ahead.
I feel like every week we can mention Trevor Bauer, um, but I just wanted to say him again because his start against the Cubs this week, 7 2/3, 3 hits, 10 strikeouts. Um, I think he's pretty much solidified himself as the NL Cy Young favorite. He's got a 174 ERA this year with a WHIP under point eight. It's 0.79 now.
Hmm.
His win loss record doesn't look great, but that's just because he plays on the Reds. Um,
And win loss is a stupid stat anyway.
right.
Huh.
But Trevor Bauer is I think he's your Cy Young going in. So I just wanted to mention him because that was a fantastic start.
Yep.
But my real starter of the week is a guy who, being on the Padres, he flies really under the radar behind now Clevenger and Paddock as well, but he might be their best starter, and that's Dinelson Lamet. This week he faced the Colorado Rockies. He did give up 6 hits, but he struck out 11. No walks, no earned runs. He's got a 2.24 ERA this year, a .92 WHIP, which WHIP is your walks and hits per innings pitched. So pretty much per innings pitched, he's given up under 1 hit or 1 walk per that. Um, you know, he's a guy who he can have games where he gives up 3, 4 runs, but he doesn't have those big blow up games really. And I know facing him, his slider is nasty. It's very disgusting. And like I said, he might be the best starting pitcher that the San Diego Padres have.
Yeah, I think he. Obviously, I think it depends a little bit on Clevenger, but I mean they have two really good ones, and Lemet's really good. So I like that. I like that pick a lot. Um, I think my pitcher this week was Corbin Burns, but I'm gonna shout out someone else as well. I'm gonna shout out Brandon Woodruff to go with Corbin Burns. Obviously, same team, kind of the same situation you're just talking about with Lamet and Clevenger, but Brandon Woodruff's pitched really well, and Corbin Burns though Woodruff was good last year. Corbin Burns is putting up some really good numbers this year. He in this week was phenomenal. This is a former top prospect who really hadn't put up that nice of a stat line before. Um, but he gave up a lot of he was pretty unlucky on home runs, last year. His first year in the big leagues in 2018, pitching only 40 innings was pretty good, but he has really taken a step forward this year. In fact, he has been one of the best pitchers in baseball, for that matter. The Brewers needed a second guy because their rotation has been so hit or miss the last several years. They've had guys like they've had Woodruff pitch well a couple times. But
Freddie
Corbin Burns,
Peralta.
Freddie Peralta, or they had that year that Ulysses Chassin pitched really well, but they really need a couple of these guys that are going to be long-term talented starters. And Corbin Burns is a guy that could very well be that. He's put up this year or this week. He had a 7 inning start with believe that's 12 strikeouts, 13 strikeouts to go along with didn't give up a run, no walks in that start as well. Um, you know, just doesn't get hit very hard. Um, and the same thing to go along with Brandon Woodruff. Pretty much had the exact same start with one more strikeout, but he gave up a few more hits. So I mean, both of these guys are very solid looking starting pitchers, and that's important for the Brewers going forward because they needed a couple young guys to turn into good starters, and Corbin Burns looks just like the part right now, so good for him. There's a bunch of guys we could have mentioned this week. I mean, you look at Dylan Bundy, you could have mentioned him yet again, another really good start. Kyle Hendricks pitched 2 games really well this week. Jacob Degrom could be—he's kind of like Trevor Bauer. You could pick him. You could have picked Jake. You could pick Jacob Degrom every single week for the last 5 years, but this, but uh, but yeah, Brady Singer had obviously had a really good week. He took a no hitter late into a game the other day. And Alec Mills you could have picked too. There was a lot of good pitchers. Oh, and Ian Anderson.
Yeah.
I think his bad start was he had a bad start that I think was technically this week, but his start against the Nationals the other day was phenomenal. I think it was
Yeah.
yesterday. So
So
um,
since you did Corbin Burns as your pitcher of the week, I wanted to just it's a little side note about Corbin Burns. He actually was born in Bakersfield, which is where I'm from, and I faced him actually one time. I was a freshman in high school. He had just graduated in 2013, but was home for the summer and was doing uh, just throwing bullpens and stuff at the local college where he or high school he went to, and we happened to be facing Centennial's team as a summer ball kind of scrimmage type deal. And Corbin Burns actually happened to come and pitch a couple innings in that. Um, Struck me out on 3 straight pitches. Don't want to talk about that exactly, but it's kind of cool to see a guy who's born in your hometown and that you actually got to face, even though you were completely unmatched. To say that somebody who's had very good starts in the major leagues has struck you out on 3 straight pitches. So
Yeah, that's cool. So I didn't know. I didn't know that until today. That's pretty cool. That
yeah,
he's a good. He's good. He's a really good pitcher. I think he's gonna. I think he's got a bright future. He's still young too. I think he's looks like
yeah,
he's
he is
20
25.
25. Yeah, I mean he's very still a young pitcher. I mean, there's 25. This is the time he needs to get it going, but he seems to have done just that. So
Yep. So, well, that will wrap it up for the BatFlip podcast this week. I think it was a really productive episode we had here.
yeah,
We will be back uh, next
next.
Sunday,
Yeah.
and hopefully we will be closer to the end of this season. Playoff battles should take a little bit more shape. Should take shape a little bit more. We should have. Hopefully, we will. We'll have a better picture of what the postseason will look like, and maybe we can do, a little kind of early postseason breakdown or
Yeah, we
something. That's
can.
something to think about.
Yeah, and can keep on the lookout. We might have a postseason preview podcast once the field is set fully. I believe we got that this. I think we got exactly 14 days, right? Field sets not this Sunday, but the next, right?
I
The
saw
last
something
day of
like
the regular season.
16, something like
This
16 days. I think it might be with
16.
the
Okay,
COVID deal. It might get a
they might
couple
have had a couple
extra
extra days to for makeup
for
games.
for makeup games or
Okay,
something. I think I
so
saw Passon say that today. But we'll figure that all out.
yeah,
We'll have more stuff for you. One thing I wanted to say is we appreciate you guys that have been tuning in and everything. We very much want your guys' feedback and your
yes,
guys'
absolutely.
opinions on how we have been doing. We've got some outside opinions from podcast reviewers and stuff, but we want to know what our listeners think and what our listeners like about our show and what they don't like, and maybe something we can adjust on. Um, so you can either go to our Twitter if you guys have a Twitter at the Batflip Podcast, or at mine, which is the real D Boy 12. And
And
what's
I'm
yours, man?
at Matt Arcara. So you can go find us on there and give us some feedback. We'd love reviews on if you're listening to us on iTunes. We'd love to hear a review there. If you can give us a if you enjoy the podcast, give us a like and a rating, and give us some feedback. We'd love to improve and make our podcast as good as it can possibly be. We're hoping to do some pretty big things, and definitely we're gonna be here every week over the off season as well. So after the postseason ends, and putting up some fun episodes, and having a little bit different type stuff. Obviously, without baseball going on, putting up a little bit of maybe some season team previews, some lists of our top 10 players of each position, stuff like that. So we would love to have some feedback, and what everyone would like us to do here. So I think I can speak for both of us, say we've enjoyed doing this so far. So
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. It's been a dream come true for both of us, I believe. Something that I've wanted to do for many years, and I just never found the motivation and the right time to do it. And it kind of just happened to all fall in line with Belly Up. And we can't thank Mike over there at Belly Up enough. He's been super supportive of us, bringing in the podcast reviewer and just giving us feedback every week. So we can't thank them enough. And like you said, the off season, maybe have a free agent prediction deal.
oh yeah,
I wanna look into something maybe where we can get the fans in as well, to where you guys can put your own predictions and kind of compete with us. That'll be something fun if I can get that all figured out on that end. But it's been really fun so far. We've kind of rambled on here at the end, but thank you all for listening to this episode of the BatFlip podcast, and we will catch you guys next time.
yep. See everybody next week.